Back in OMONI, the news of Ikena's disappearance spread like wildfire. Igwe Obieze was furious. His once proud son, now a fugitive. He had prayed in his heart that Ikena would come to his senses and plead for mercy, as he only disowned and banished him to scare him. But he never thought that he would really leave the kingdom. Nnamdi, seizing the opportunity, wasted no time in convincing the elders that Ikena had betrayed the kingdom. The heir of Nwaokike has forsaken his duty, Nnamdi declared before the council. He has run off with a slave, and in doing so, he has brought shame upon our people. We must find him and bring him back to face justice. The elders, many of whom had grown suspicion of Ikena's growing sympathy towards the Amadi, agreed. A search party was formed, led by Nnamdi himself, to hunt down Ikena and Amaka. Nnamdi relished the opportunity to not only eliminate his rival, but also to cement his position as the future leader of the Nwaokike clan. As the search party set out, Amaka's father, Onyedike, caught wind of their plan. He knew that if they were caught, both Ikena and his daughter would face a terrible fate. The rebellion within the Amadi had already begun to stir. And now, with the disappearance of Amaka and Ikena, it seemed that the time for action was near. As Ikena and Amaka continued their journey, exhaustion began to take its toll. After several days of travel, they stumbled upon a hidden cave nestled in the side of a hill. The entrance was covered by vines, almost as if the land itself had been protecting the place from discovery. "We will rest here," Ikena said, leading Amaka inside. The cave was cool and dark, a safe refuge from the dangerous outside. As they settled down, Amaka looked around, her eyes drawn to the strange carving on the wall. Intricate patterns were etched into the stone, telling stories of a time long before their own. There were images of great warriors, healers, and kings, people who had once lived in harmony before the curse had divided them. "These are the stories of our ancestors," Amaka whispered, tracing her fingers along the carvings. "Before the curse, before the division between the freeborn and the slaves, we were one people." Ikena sat beside her, studying the carving with a frown. "The curse has torn us apart for so long. What if there is a way to break it?" Amaka turned to him, her eyes wild with hope. "Do you really believe that?" "I don't know," Ikena admitted. "But these carvings, they show a time before the curse. If our ancestors lived in peace once, then maybe we can find a way to do the same." For the first time since they had fled, a glimmer of hope flickered in Amaka's heart. Perhaps their journey wasn't just about escaping OMONI. Perhaps it was about something bigger, about finding a way to heal the wounds of their people. Back in OMONI, Igwe Obieze passed, and tension between the Nwaokike and the Amadi reached a boiling point. The Amadi, long oppressed by the curse and the rules of the freeborn, could no longer remain silent. Onyedike, who had always been a quiet leader among his people, now stood at the forefront of the rebellion. "We have been slaves for too long," he declared to a gathering of the Amadi. "The Nwaokike have used the curse to keep us bound. But we know the truth. We are not lesser because of our birth. We are not slaves because we are weak. We are strong, and now we must fight for our freedom. The Amadi, who had lived in the shadows for generations, now ready to rise, armed with the weapon they have crafted in secret, they began to prepare for the battle ahead. Onyedike knew that it would not be an easy fight, but he also knew that they had no choice. The curse has taken enough from them. As the rebellion grew, Nnamdi and the Nwaokike elders became increasingly alarmed. The Amadi had always been obedient, quiet in their servitude. But now, they were threatening the very foundation of their kingdom. Nnamdi, desperate to quench the rebellion before it could take hold, ordered a crackdown on the Amadi. He sent warriors to parole the Amadi quarters, searching for any sign of insurrection. But the Amadi were prepared. They had hidden their weapons, and their plans were shrouded in secrecy. The tension in OMONI grew thicker by the day. The kingdom was on the brink of civil war, and all eyes were on Onyedike as he prepared to lead his people in a fight for freedom. As Ikenna and Amaka rested in the cave, they were unaware of the danger closing in around them. Nnamdi's search party had been relentless, and after days of tracking their movements, they finally found a clue. Footprints leading towards the hills. Nnamdi, driven by his hatred for Ikenna and his desire for power, pushed the men harder. "We will find them," he groaned, his eyes gleaming with determination. "Ikenna will pay for his betrayal, and the girl will be dealt with accordingly." As they followed the trail into the hills, Nnamdi's heart raced with anticipation. He knew that once he captures Ikenna, the throne would be his. The elders would have no choice but to crown him as the next Igwe. All he needed to do was to bring back Ikenna in chains. But as they drew closer to the cave, a sense of unease settled over Nnamdi's men. The hills were silent, too silent, as if the land itself was warning them to turn back. Yet Nnamdi pressed on, his hunger for power blinding him to the dangers ahead. Inside the cave, Ikenna and Amaka were preparing to leave. They had rested long enough, and they knew that the search party would soon be upon them. As they gathered their things, Amaka's heart ached with the weight of everything they had lost. "Do you think we will ever be free?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ikenna wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "I don't know, Amaka, but I know that as long as we are together, we will find a way." As they were about to leave the cave, the sounds of footsteps echoed from outside. Ikenna's heart raced. "They found us," he whispered. Without hesitation, Ikenna drew his dagger, standing protectively in front of Amaka. The cave was their last refuge, and he would not let Nnamdi take her from him. As Nnamdi and his men entered the cave, a tense silence fell over the group. Ikenna and Nnamdi locked eyes, both of them knowing that this confrontation had been inevitable. "Well, cousin," Nnamdi sneered, his voice dripping with malice, "it seems you've been busy." Ikenna tightened his grip on the dagger. "This doesn't have to end in blood, Nnamdi. Let us go. We will never return to Umuna." Nnamdi laughed coldly. "Do you really think that I will let you walk away? You've shamed our family. "Our kingdom, you are a traitor, and traitors must face justice." As Nnamdi advanced, Amaka stepped forward, her voice filled with quiet defiance. "It's not Ikenna who has betrayed the kingdom. It's the curse. It has divided us for too long. We deserve to be free." Nnamdi's eyes flashed with fury. "You're nothing but a slave. You have no right to speak of freedom." But before Nnamdi could strike, a voice echoed from the cave's entrance. "Enough!" Onyedike appeared, flanked by a group of Amadi warriors. "The time for oppression is over. The Amadi will no longer bow to the Nwaokike." The cave was filled with tension as the two sides stood at an impasse. Ikenna, Amaka, Nnamdi, and Onyedike, each of them representing the past and the future, love and hate, slavery and freedom. The fate of Umona hung in the balance, and with it, the future of Ikenna and Amaka's love. The cave became a battleground of wills. On one side stood Amadi and the Nwaokike warriors, proud, their birthright fueling their resolve. On the other stood Onyedike and the Amadi, tired of their chains, but filled with the fire of rebellion. Ikenna stood in the middle, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. He had never wanted violence, but he knew that this was a fight for their freedom. Amaka's eyes met with his, filled with love, fear, and unspoken understanding. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Nnamdi sneered at the sight of Onyedike. "You think you can come here and make demands, you slave? You forgot your place." Onyedike's expression hardened. "It is you who forgot. The land belongs to all of us. We are not slaves because of our birth. We are slaves because you have made us so. But no more. The time of your rule is over." Nnamdi's face twisted with rage, and in a swift motion, he drew his sword, pointing it at Ikenna. "This is your doing, cousin. You and that slave girl have brought this upon our people." Before Ikenna could respond, Onyedike stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This has been coming long before Ikenna and Amaka's love. The curse has torn us apart for generations, but today, we will end it." The first blow came swift and unexpected. Nnamdi, filled with rage, charged towards Onyedike, his sword aimed for the elder's heart, but Onyedike was quick, deflecting the attack with the skill of a seasoned warrior. The cave erupted into chaos as the Nwaokike warriors clashed with the Amadi. Ikenna found himself fighting side by side with Onyedike, defending Amaka as the battle raged around him. He parried Nnamdi's strikes, his heart pounding in his chest. Every movement was a struggle, not just for survival, but for the future of Umona. Amaka, though terrified, refused to stand idle. She grabbed a falling staff and used it to defend herself, her eyes filled with determination. She had grown up a slave, but in her heart she knew she was meant for more. Nnamdi, blinded by his desire for power, fought with reckless abandon. "You've ruined everything, Ikenna," he shouted, swinging wildly. "The throne should have been mine." Ikenna's face grim as he deflected Nnamdi's blow. This was never about the throne. It was about doing what is right. Their swords clashed, sparks flying as the fight reached its peak. But even as the battle raged around them, Ikenna could see that the Amadi were holding their own. The years of oppression had hardened them, and now, in their fight for freedom, they were unstoppable. As the battle reached at its climax, Onyedike found himself face to face with Nnamdi once more. The two men circled each other, their eyes locked in a silent challenge. Nnamdi was younger, faster, but Onyedike had the wisdom of age and the strength of a man fighting for his people. In a swift move, Nnamdi lunged at Onyedike, his sword aimed for the elder's heart. But at the last second, Onyedike dodged the blow, knocking Nnamdi's sword off his hands. Nnamdi fell to the ground, gasping for breath as Onyedike stood over him. "Your time is over," Onyedike said, his voice steady. The Amadi will no longer be slave. For a moment, Nnamdi's eyes flashed with fear. But just as Onyedike was about to deliver the last blow, a cry raged out from behind them. "Father! No!" It was Amaka. She stood at the entrance of the cave, her eyes wide with terror. She had always known that this day would come, but now, seeing her father about to kill, she couldn't bear it. Onyedike paused, his hand trembling. In the moment, he realized if he killed Nnamdi, the cycle of hatred would only continue. The bloodshed would never end. With a deep breath, Onyedike lowered his sword. "No more," he said quietly. "We will not win our freedom with more death." Nnamdi, still on the ground, looked up at him in disbelief. "You are a fool," he spat. "You will never be free." But Onyedike didn't respond. He turned and walked away, his heart heavy, but his resolve unshaken. The fight was over, and though the Amadi had won the battle, Onyedike knew that the true victory would come in the days ahead. Nnamdi's pride was shattered. The Nwaokike warriors, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat, leaving the cave in silence. Ikenna, battered and bruised, approached Nnamdi as he lay on the ground. "This is not the way things had to be, Nnamdi," Ikenna said softly. "We could have found peace." Nnamdi's face twisted with rage, but his body was too weak to fight anymore. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. "You and your slave." Ikenna shook his head, his heart heavy. "Amaka is no slave. She is free, just as we all should be." With that, Ikenna turned away, leaving Nnamdi to his fate. The rebellion had begun, and with it, the kingdom of OMONI would be changed forever. Days passed, and the news of the battle spread throughout OMONI. The Nwaokike elders, realizing that the Amadi would no longer be suppressed, called for a peace talk. They had seen enough bloodshed, and they knew that if the kingdom was to survive, they would have to find a way to coexist. Ikenna and Amaka, now free from the chains of their past, returned to OMONI as symbol of hope. Their love, once forbidden, had become a beacon for their people. The Nwaokike and the Amadi, though still wary of each other, began to work together to rebuild their kingdom. The elders all moved to the chief priest. He was the traditional and spiritual custodian of the law of OMONI. They inquired of him on how to break the curse that have held the Amadis for so long. The chief priest cleared his throat and then decreed, "By a king the curse was laid, and by a king the curse will be removed. Go, crown Ikenna the king, and let him bless the Amadi, and make both the Nwaokike and the Amadi one kingdom again." So the elders did as they were told, and Ikenna was crowned, and he blessed the Amadi. removing the curse that was once placed on them, building a kingdom where all were equal, free from the curse of the past. And after the blessings, he proceeded to marry Amaka, the daughter of Onyedike. As for Nnamdi, he was exiled from Umuna. His thirst for power, his undoing. His name became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when ambition blinds the heart. Under the bright sun of a new dawn, Ikenna and Amaka stood together at the riverbank, the place where their love had first blossomed. The kingdom was healing, slowly but surely, and with it their hearts. "We've come so far," Amaka said softly, her hands in Ikenna's. Ikenna nodded, his eyes filled with love and hope. "And we will go even further together." As they looked out over the river, they knew that their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, but they were ready to face them, side by side, as equals, as partners, as two people who had found love in the midst of chaos. And so, with the kingdom of Umuna on the path to unity, their love stronger than ever, Ikenna and Amaka began the next chapter of their life, a chapter filled with hope, freedom, and the promise of a future where no one would be bound by the chains of the past.